Bob Fryer here in the AAPEX studio. I want to thank our sponsors, Repairify and Great Water 360 Auto Care. We are joined right now by Michael Chung. He's the Senior Director of Market Intelligence for the auto care industry. Michael, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Bob. Thanks for having me.
See, now I have a computer just to look more important. Yours seems to be something that is really going on. Are you a kind of a numbers guy?
I am. My job is to bring data, insights, and trends to the industry and to our membership. So
overall, how thriving, how good is the aftermarket industry?
The aftermarket continues to be strong.
Okay.
It's always a safe investment for the investment community. It's relatively recession-proof, doesn't see seasonality. And what we've seen this past year is continued growth. We have this thing called the Joint Channel Forecast, which sizes the aftermarket. And in 2022, it was $360 billion for automotive. So this is light trucks and passenger vehicles. And that was a 9.7% increase over the prior year.
Okay.
And it's projected to grow 8.1% more this year in 2023, and then in subsequent years, 4 or 5%. So always a steady investment. And so from a numbers perspective, strong. Kind of like the State of the Union is very strong.
It's always strong.
Right.
They never come out and say it's lousy. I don't know what to tell you, folks.
But in the case of the automotive aftermarket, always reliable, always dependable, and strong performance, and this year is no different. And when we talk to our members, and our members, as you probably know, span the entire value chain from parts manufacturers, distributors, service providers, repair shops, everybody I talk to is very bullish. Everybody's been busy.
Good.
Sales are strong, distribution has been strong, not without its challenges as we can talk about, but when you look at the entire from a holistic perspective, the aftermarket continues to thrive.
Good. Now you mentioned that the aftermarket industry is recession-proof, but no industry is completely devoid of the challenges, as you mentioned.
Right.
We're dealing with an economy with high interest rates, perhaps supply chain issues and so forth.
Right.
How have industries been dealing with that?
That's a great question, Bob. And since the pandemic, we've seen a lot of supply chain issues.
Okay.
In this calendar year, we've seen really high interest rates as well as high inflation. Inflation was like 9.5%, and I think you and I as consumers, we feel that.
Yeah.
And what we've seen, we did a survey of a number of our members, and how have companies across the aftermarket dealt with these issues. So for inflation and for cost of capital, what we've generally seen is a lot of companies have been passing those costs on to consumers. And we've also seen where, with regard to supply chain issues, really making sure that if you're a manufacturer, that you have the critical materials that you need, that you have those on hand, that you're working with your suppliers to make sure you have access to those materials, and you're increasing the number of suppliers that you have, as well as thinking about where your production is happening. So when we think about movement of goods from point A to point B, if there's a lot of distance there, then you may be more susceptible to shocks. So we've seen trends of local production to local consumption, meaning that wherever your goods are being purchased, try to have the production sites close to those consumption sources, which makes sense, right? Because if you're transporting goods from Asia across the Pacific, from Europe to across the Atlantic, trying to move those goods closer to where they're actually being purchased. There's been movement there. As well as if you're a retailer, making sure that you have critical products on supply so that you don't leave your customers empty-handed. And if you are a distributor, perhaps you're a distribution company where you're buying products from one group and you're selling those products to your customers. The importance of communication has been even more so throughout these last several years, because if I'm a distributor, I need to be hearing from my suppliers if they're going to be able to make that order, if there's going to be an additional surcharge because of increased fuel prices, if there will be delays, so that I don't disappoint my customers and make sure that I can pass along any sales increases. Have there been any changes to the contracts?
Michael, I just want to quickly ask you one last thing about electric vehicles, because we've been talking a lot about that. Obviously a growing sector of the aftermarket industry, and how have manufacturers and suppliers been dealing with what is going to be a critical need in the future?
Sure, so we just had a study come out on EV adoption, out to 2045.
Wow.
And what we do in that report, Bob, is we have projections of what percentage of new vehicles in the US are expected to be battery electric vehicle.
Yeah.
And we expect that 35%, about 1/3 of vehicles by 2030 are expected to be BEV, and 86% by 2045.
Okay.
And what does that mean for the overall car park? What percentage of all vehicles in the US will be BEV? So those same dates, 2030, we expect 10% of existing vehicles to be BEV, and by 2045, nearly half, 47%.
As I say, a growing industry. Yep.
Exactly, so what's exciting to see is how parts manufacturers, how service providers are adapting to the incoming numbers of EVs on the road. So you're seeing companies adjust their strategies, you're seeing companies make new partnerships, perhaps exploring new territories with regard to parts categories that they may develop and sell.
Yeah.
You're seeing service providers really make the investment into whether it's equipment, training, and other things to keep their shop in tune with the times as emerging technologies become implemented. So I encourage all members to go check out the report on our website because it's just chock full of great information.
That's good information. Michael, thank you so much, my friend. Thank you for joining us here.
Pleasure to see you, Bob.
Much appreciated. And again, so much to see here at AAPEX 23 when you're out and about. Make sure you're taking those pictures and uploading to whatever social media site you like, but make sure you use that hashtag AAPEX 23. I'm Bob Fryer in the AAPEX studio.